everybody. Hi, I'm Keith Vitali. Welcome to Sidekick Podcast. In this episode, I have on a very special guest, a dear friend of mine. His name is Mike Stone. Before I bring him on, let me tell you a little bit about him. I've interviewed a good many icons and martial arts greats, and this one's a little different, and let me tell you why. Of course, he was a martial arts champion during his era, and he went on to do films and became an actor, stuntman, writer, and so many other things we're going to cover in topics in this interview. But here's a few things you might not be aware of. One is he started the ninja craze not only here in America, but all over the world. He had this idea about doing a ninja movie, and they put a script together. They took it to Canon Films, and then they had a movie produced called Enter the Ninja. Now, I'm very thankful for that movie because I played in the sequel, Revenge of the Ninja, and I co-starred with Sho Kosugi. So thank you, Mike, for that. Now, here's something else you might not be aware of. During his era, when he competed, in my opinion, Mike Stone was the single most intimidating black belt in America. Now, what does this mean? Well, when you put it into perspective that the people he competed against and the people he was training with at that time were the likes of Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, Alan Steen, Joe Louis, and others of that same caliber. So when I say this man was the most intimidating man, then that says a lot. Please say hi to my good friend, Mike Stone. Stone, hi,
Hi,
Mike.
Mike Stone.
I want to ask you, I want to start off with, did you develop the ridge hand? Did you create the ridge hand? I know it's one of your favorite techniques. I've seen you on magazines doing them and doing them a lot. Tell me about the ridge hand.
When I first started karate, I was in the military. I was at Port Chaffee, Arkansas, and I met a guy from Hawaii, Sergeant Peters, who was from Hawaii, same island I'm from, Maui. And he had just returned from Okinawa, was going to open up a school on the post. So I was one of 5 or 6 Hawaiians on that military base. We gravitated toward him and we started a class. It was actually my instructor that was his pet technique. The ridge hand was his
Wow.
technique. Uh, I want to, yeah. Now that you ask about it, I want people to understand something. Uh, the ridge hand was not originally accepted as a legitimate technique because people stated without valid reasons that it had no power, that it looked like a flimsy type of a technique. Now, I will agree to a point. The ridge hand, I never learned a kata that had a ridge hand in it. I never learned any basics that had a ridge hand in it. So yes, ridge hand was not a typical martial arts technique that you would find in almost all systems that are related. Whether it's Japanese systems, Chinese, ridge hands were not in it. So the idea that my instructor preferred this particular technique for fighting was that even to the extent that it became my favorite go-to technique, and I never used it in training. We never used it against each other. And the reason we didn't was because we had no control over it. It was a kind of a wild technique that we threw at all kinds of different angles, and we had no control. So we didn't try to use it on each other for the simple reason for safety. Because I was knocking people out with it all the time. And it wasn't because it was such I had no control. So this is part of the blood and guts period. People talk about control, nonsense. Everybody was really trying to knock your head off. All the competition during that time, I never wore a mouthpiece. I never wore a protective cup ever in competition. And all the times I've ever fought, nobody ever punched me in the face. So
The
that
reason I
says,
jumped into this, think about that. The reason I jumped in the middle of this, because I'm going to digress and take you back to your childhood and sports and all of that. But a friend of mine, George Chung, I don't know if you know George Chung, he just purchased Black Belt Magazine. Just within 30 days, he featured an article on the ridge hand. He called up people in my era and he asked us all questions about the ridge hand. Did you like the ridge hand? Did you use the ridge hand? And here's what I told him. I said I used it defensively. I didn't use it as an offensive weapon because I had a guy named Steve Fisher teach me the ridge hand. That's how I learned my ridge hand, your student. So I was
yeah,
training with him and he was and I competed against Steve. I fought him 4 times. But back then, we all loved the rich hand. Some people used it offensively, some people used it defensively. But the reason I brought it up right now is because George Chung devoted an entire article in Black Belt Magazine, the last issue, on nothing but the rich hand by itself. But I thought that was pretty cool because that was almost a marquee for you that I know that you use because I would talk with Steve all the time. But when you were
Yes.
going back to your childhood and you were in Hawaii and you were learning martial arts, were you a good athlete? Were you participating in other sports as well?
Uh, yeah. When my this is a very important part because it talks about the start of me identifying myself. I was a junior in high school, and I had a junior summer of 3 months that were on vacation, but I went to a boarding school for 4 years. So during my junior summer, actually all my summers, freshman, sophomore, and junior year, I could work at the high school because it was a boarding school that was funded by the government. So they needed a skeleton crew to stay back at the high school during the summer months to take care of the dairy, the poultry, the swine, the garden, the kitchen, the fire department. So we were self-contained. So during my junior summer, I was walking. I my freshman year, I loved, first of all my life, I loved everything Japanese. My best friends were not Hawaiians like I was. My best friends were Japanese, always. The girls, the food, the culture, the respect, the integrity, everything Japanese, I already started to develop a mental attractiveness and an affinity for that type of thinking. So it started very young in my life, from the time I went to elementary school at sixth grade, kindergarten. From that time on, I already accepted that Japanese had a particular way of thinking that I gravitated to it. So fast forward now, I'm in a junior in high school. Um, we'll take a half a step back. When I was 11 years old, two things happened in my life that were turning points that changed me forever. The third thing was when I was a junior. When I was 11 years old, one incident happened where I wanted to play basketball. And my house was right across the schoolyard, really, right across. So from my bedroom window, I could see there were people playing basketball on the court. I ran out of the house, ran across, went to the schoolyard, and asked if I could play. They said no, I couldn't. But I ran up and down the entire time they're going back and forth and say, wait a minute, one team only has 4 guys. I can join that team. They said, no, we don't want you. I kept going back and forth. Finally, when they took a break, I said, why can't I play with you? So these are the reasons they gave me. You're not fast enough. You're not big enough. You're not good enough. When they said that word, I was not good enough, I could do one of two things. I understand later on, fight or flight. I decided to run. I decided to run home, talk to my father, and said all the things I wanted for Christmas on my list. I don't want any of them. I don't want the Roy Rogers gun set. I don't want the fake horse. I don't want the marbles. I don't want the hula hoop. I don't want the jacks. I don't want the slingshot. I only need a basketball. My father thought I was crazy. So for Christmas morning, that's all I received. My other siblings had 3 or 4 gifts. I only had a basketball, and he didn't bother hiding it. He just wrapped this round thing with red and green and white Christmas paper and said, here. I tore the
Wow.
covers off, ran across the schoolyard, and began this new idea at 11. I'll show you guys. Someday you'll all want to be on my team. This was my mindset. So for
Nice.
3 years, I practiced. My first trophy, I have it here, is a trophy about this big. It's for being a basketball all-star in elementary school. I was one of the
Wow.
best basketball players on the island within 3 years of the time that I was upset at them. So now, when I was in high school, they wrote a lot of things about me while I was still in elementary school. One guy, a sports writer named Wayne Tanaka, wrote an article in the Maui News that said, the curly haired kid grows up. And it's about me in elementary school being such an exceptional athlete already that several of the high schools, there's only 4 high schools, wanted to recruit me to play football for them. And the school that was closest to me, the high school, Maui High School, I didn't go there. I decided to go to the school that was a boarding department because I wanted to get away from my father. So I decided to go there for 4 years, and it's about 70 miles away. So when I went there was expectations. Now, expectations produce only two things in life: disappointment and unhappiness. That's the result of expectations. So when I went there, everybody had high expectations of me being a great athlete. Didn't do anything. My first 3 years in high school, I did absolutely nothing. But come my junior summer that I'm talking about, there was a photographer named Loli Nakamoto, Japanese guy that was our sports photographer for high school. He took some amazing pictures of me playing football. And I bumped into him one day because I would go downtown on Sundays to watch samurai movies when I was in high school. And I bumped into him and he says, Mike, what are you doing this summer? I said, nothing, just working at the high school. He said, oh, I'm going to go to Aikido class tonight, and there's somebody quite rare that's going to be there to teach. And I said, oh, what is it? He said, Mike, you should take up Aikido. It'll really help your senior year when you become an athlete for your balance, your focus, your concentration, and all your discipline, stuff like that. So that already sparked my interest. So he said, oh, there's a guy named Koichi Tohei who's going to be our instructor for 2 weeks, and he tours the world internationally to promote Aikido under Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido. So I still had no idea who he was. So that night, I attended the first class. At that class that I attended, watching him perform and speak, which had to be translated most of the time, I realized this is a master. This is martial arts. This is who, not what, this is who I want to be. So that started that night. The next day, I bumped into my football coach named Jimmy Gregg. Jimmy Gregg handled the backs and the ends, the running backs and the ends. That was his department to take care of. At the end of my junior year, I didn't do anything special. Jimmy bumped into me the very next day. Now we talk about this word called synchronicity, right? How things happen in life. So now I know I'm getting off the track, so that's up to you to edit out what you want to put in with the ridge hand and everything. But it's
keep
all
going. I'm enjoying this.
No, it's all a part of it. I cannot take it out,
right?
Because if I do, I'm not telling you the whole story about the mindset that was so important. So anyway, Jimmy saw me the next day and he says, "Oh, Mike, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm just working at the school for the summertime." He said, "Oh, listen, what about if we get together twice a week and we can start working on your pass patterns and kicking and running and doing all the different things you need before spring practice, which was a year, 6 weeks from then. They want to start spring practice before the school starts for football." So he said, "You can get a jump on everybody else." So my attitude was like, yeah, what the hell? I'm not doing anything anyway. So he decided to come up and spend 2 days a week with me. Within 1 week, he elevated it to 4. Within 3 weeks, he said 5 days a week. He taught me everything about football. I became the punter. I became a quarterback, a halfback, an end, a wide receiver. The only position I did not play was guard, tackle, and center my senior year. Now, we come from an island with only 4 high schools: Maui High, St. Anthony, Baldwin High, and Lahaina Luna, where I went to school. 4. Our season is 8 games. 2 games against each of the other 3 teams on the island, and 2 preseason games against better high schools on the main island of Oahu. So my whole football career is 8 games. But in the 6 weeks leading up to spring practice, I learned so much. But this is what I learned. He said, "Mike, life is very simple. It's all about you creating a particular mindset. And the mindset is not something you create for certain things. A mindset is who you become. This mindset is you. You have to understand that. When you change the pathways of your brain, when you change the rewiring of your brain cells, and you create a new belief system that it is now what I want to achieve through hard work, suffer, and sacrifice. No, nothing ever has to be done that way. So he said, this is our mantra: be the best you can always. That was it. My junior year, he gave me that mantra, and that has been, I see, I'm now 80. I'm still using it every day in my life. That's my mantra.
Wow.
So this is how it affected me in martial arts and everything, my whole life. So from that moment on, we had 6 weeks with just him and I, teaching me everything he could. Then we had spring practice. When spring practice started, I was ready to play offense and defense all game. I was in shape, stamina. I could do
Wow.
anything. So he decided to make me one of the co-captains with the quarterback. So the quarterback and I became co-captains of the football team. We also became co-captains of the basketball team. So this is my letter in high school. The star on top, the two stars, is for being captain. The two slashes are the two sports that I was captain of, and the three sports underneath are basketball, football, and track. So this is my Letterman Award. Then the trophy I
Holy
talked to you
smoke.
about, my basketball trophy is this one.
Oh
This is
my
in
goodness.
1958. An elementary school all-star basketball player in 3 years, from people telling me, you can't do that, you're not big enough, strong enough, fast enough, you're no good, you won't amount to anything. Nonsense. So Jimmy now reinforces this with be the best you can always. That was our mantra. And I started that. I had 6 weeks of this going into spring practice. I was ready to play. Now let's get to the games. We had 2 preseason games before the season started with 2 schools from other islands. So we played those. Now, of the 6 games that we had with the other 3 teams twice, I was selected as the most outstanding player in the league. I became an all-star as an N in that team. Now listen to this. This is truly important. I want you to understand the magnitude of this concept. At the end of 1 year, playing 8 football games, they selected me as a decade all-star, the best N in the state of Hawaii for 10 years. And I only
Oh,
played
wow.
1 year, one
Yeah.
year for 8 games.
Wow.
Now the question comes to mind, how can you be so good at everything? Easy. When you believe in yourself to the degree that I will do everything to the best of my ability now, always. That means in each and every moment, I am this idea. I'm not going to become it. I'm not going to be like everybody else I've ever met, even in martial arts. I'm going to try hard. I'm going to work. I'm going to sacrifice and suffer. Keith, I have never practiced sparring ever.
You told me that when
Never.
we used to play golf together, work out together. You told me that. I found it so hard to believe. You
Yes,
just
but
do.
everything I've done is incredible to believe because you don't have the same system of thinking. I I was not trying to ever become. Now let's go forward again about the ridge hand. Let's go forward into my karate. So that was in high school. So everything I've ever done, volleyball, basketball, marbles, hula hoop, jacks, it doesn't matter what I'm playing. I'm going to be not better than you. I'm going to be the best I can be for me. So for me, it was very easy. Why? I never had opposition. I never had an opponent. Never. I never looked at anybody as somebody I had to be concerned about, that he was my opponent, that I needed to hate him, I didn't know half the people I ever fought and beat. I didn't know their name. I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. That's how this mindset works. So my very first day in karate, this is the truth. My first night in training, there were 6 of us in the class that started that night. My instructor said the first night, he said, I don't know what you guys think about martial arts and about black belt, but I'm telling you right now, it'll take you a minimum of 5 years to get your black belt. And I questioned him in my mind only. I said, why? Why should it take that long? He apparently heard my question in my mind and said, because that is what the society, that's what all martial arts systems that came. Remember, they were all military people. We didn't have any kids taking karate in 1963. Everybody that did karate pretty much were in the military, the police, or some type of security system. So these were already grown men. So the first night when he said that, I said to myself, well, I don't believe you. I have a philosophy that says, in this moment, I had him right. The reason I positioned myself always right in front of my instructor every night for class was I used him as an example of what a black belt is. I will punch like him. I will think like him. I will perform like him. I will act like him when? Now. When? Now. In this moment. So in each and every moment that I exist, that I believe I am being my best, it doesn't take long to be your best. When does it take? How long does it take? Instantaneously. You can become the best you ever want to be only in the moment you exist. I can't be better 2 weeks from now. So I really resented this idea that, okay, let me teach you this technique. Okay, work on it for a couple of weeks, come back and show me what you've learned. Bullshit. Bullshit. I know people that have been in karate 10 years. They worse than they were the day they started. Bullshit. That's not true. And yet we perpetuated this idea. We still do. I don't like it. 40 years ago, I left America for that reason. I did not like the direction karate was going in. I felt guilty and ashamed that I was the one that was the leading example. People were following my example. I was teaching them how to be. I was already at 11 when my mother died, was the other thing at 11 years old. I became naturally violent and aggressive. I possessed the qualities 11 years old every coach wanted in a football player, to be violent and aggressive. It was natural for me to do that. Natural. And that's why also I became good at karate. What are you going to do? Kick my ass? Are you kidding?
Well,
And you're
come
six
here.
feet five?
Let me throw an
I'm sorry.
observation in there. I'll throw an
I'm sorry.
observation. Let me just. Most people now, if you have kids, you're going to enroll in soccer, gymnastics, swimming, golf, but always martial arts. It's part of the regiment now. But back in our day, in your day especially, the athletes didn't gravitate towards martial arts. Most of the time, if you had a problem with confidence or being bullied, the parents would enroll you in martial arts in mainland. And so what happens, we found out, is when you found a particular student come in who was a great athlete, then that person transformed so quickly and so they became just spectacular because martial arts can take a basic student who's not even gifted. Within a year, 2 years, 3 years, they're really good at self-defense and they have confidence and self-esteem. But imagine what you do when you get an athlete like you, an athlete like Bill Wallace and Don Wilson. Don Wilson's story is very similar to yours, the sports he played and how he excelled in college, etc. So you were a perfect prototype athlete that got involved in martial arts. Then your mindset is what separated you from everybody else. Because I've heard this and we've taught this. You don't punch as a white belt or green belt you in your mind envision yourself a black belt with every move because you were looking at a black belt and you said, I'm going to perform like a black belt. And that's what you did.
Absolutely.
And before long, that's who you were.
Yes. So within a short period of time, so let's say we started, and then I didn't believe him. So I did my own idea. He said that they have rules and regulations, the association in Okinawa, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, they all had the same thing. Any American or foreigner that came back from those countries that started to teach karate, they were already instructed, you don't give these Americans black belts right away, a minimum of 5 years. That was a
Right, right.
standard. And this was the standard he told me my first day. But I chose not to believe him. I chose to believe I am my best every second. Now, this is the way it works, if I may, please. I don't want to I'm not being preachy, but I want you to understand truly how it works, how the brain works, how the mind works. Psycho-cybernetics, all these type of things. I have every positive book on the planet. I have over 350 books. I've read them all. They didn't do shit for me. They didn't do anything to change. What I learned from Jimmy and what I learned through practical experience and the application of the principles in daily experience, this is what changed my life. Not anything I've ever read. So this idea was that, okay, day one, 3 months later, I'm still a white belt. He gets an invitation from Lou Angel from Tulsa, Oklahoma, right across the border from where I was in Fort Smith. They were going to have a tournament there. So we were invited. So the instructor came to us. This is our third month. He said, listen, we just got an invitation for a karate tournament in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, yeah, I'm being, I have this passion and excitement that makes people feel like I'm intimidating them. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm just passionate. So people that are watching
Passionate.
don't get, yeah, I'm
No,
just
passionate.
passionate about what I believe in.
Yeah,
It's not
I love it.
anger.
I
I'm
love
not
it.
one. So
I'm
I'm just
Italian,
talking
so
to,
I'm accused of this all the time. I'm Italian. So my people go, "What are you yelling?" Yelling? I'm passionate. That's how I talk. I'm,
yeah.
I'm just talking to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm Hawaiian Italian, so I must have took it from you. So
But go ahead.
so
What
after
happened now?
three,
You want your go ahead.
yeah, I'm on my third month, and we get this invitation to go, and he says to us, "How many want to go?" Well, remember, I just got out of high school about 3 4 months ago. I'm in the best shape of my life. I don't smoke, drink, or party. I don't take drugs. I never taken drugs ever. So I'm like, compete? Oh man! I raised my hand right away. I'd like to do that. So he said, okay, but the people that I want you to fight against have some experience. And I thought, like, experience? You mean like the basketball guys that said I had no experience when I was 11 years old? You mean these people I'm going to compete against? Okay. So he said, well, uh, I'm going to have you enter brown belt division.
Just 3 months. Whoa,
Yeah,
that's
because I
pretty
want you
cool.
to get experience. I want you to get the experience that people think you lack. So, in order for you to get it as fast as possible, fight in that division. Now, these people are grown men. These are not high school kids. These are grown men that came back from the military. They have 2.5 years experience over me, half their time into black belt. So I'll be fighting brown belts. So when we went there, I used the analogy. Remember this trophy? This trophy was a guiding light to me throughout my whole career. So I said, okay, they told me I couldn't do it. I'm not fast enough, big enough, strong enough. I'm not good enough. I have to work hard, suffer and sacrifice. Nonsense. That's not the way life really is. But if you believe that, that's how your life will become. It's up to you. So I said, when I went to the tournament, uh, she said, is this your student? To my instructor. He said, yeah, I want to sign him up for brown belt division. She said, which one? He said, what do you mean? He said, we have two divisions, kata and sparring. He said, in both. So she said, that'll be $10. So it was $5 per division. So I said, ma'am, before I give you my $10, can I go into the arena? Do you have the trophies there? Yeah. Can I go in and pick out the two that I will take home today? And she looked at my instructor and said, where do you find this guy? He's so arrogant. This guy says,
No.
where's my trophies? I want to see it before I pay for it. I said, yeah. So I went in. I picked up the first brown belt one that was for kata. I said, wow, brown belt kata, $5. It was about 11 inches. I said, such a deal for $11. I found the one for fighting, kumite. It looked exactly like the kata one, only thing with a different nameplate. The trophy was exactly the same. So to justify me taking two, I said, I need bookends. So I'll take both. Thank you. So at the end of the tournament, I won two. While we were there, I met Alan Steen. I fought Alan Steen in a round robin. White belt, brown belt, and black belt fought at the end of the tournament for a round robin. I fought Alan when I was a white belt, disguised as a brown belt. Alan beat me with a sidekick, legitimate, was clean, nice shot. I congratulated him for him. After that, he said, listen, I have a tournament next month in Dallas, Texas, the United States Karate Championship. I'd like to invite you guys to come. So now we went back and I did the same thing. The first thing I asked Alan was, you have trophies there? He said, yeah. I said, how much is the entry fee? He said, $7. I said, $7? That's $2 more than here. I said, are they bigger? He said, yes, about 3 or 4 inches. I said, okay, I'll take two more. Thank you. I went to Alan's tournament and won again. Two more. When I was there with Alan, I met June Rhee, who's going to hold the nationals the next month in Arlington, Virginia. This is the first time Pat Burleson had won the nationals that year. I was a brown belt. Pat was a black belt, and Pat was a defending the next year. So when we went there, I already asked Junri, are you going to have trophies? Because that was all in my mind. All I wanted to do was win trophies. I didn't care about the titles or anything. It's just I want to get some more trophies. So he said yes. So I said, how much are they? And he said $10. I said, $10? That's twice as much as in the first tournament. He said, but they're really big. Like how big? Like about 13 inches. So I tried to calculate. I said, okay, good. I'll take two more. So I went to the nationals and won two more. Now at the
Was it
nationals,
still brown belt division? Still brown belt
yes,
division?
brown belt
Yeah.
division, yes. So when I fought at brown belt, I'll tell you the story later. But let me talk about the ridge hand now. So at this event, uh, my instructor also competed, and Pat Burleson had won the black belt division. Alan Steen and my instructor fought in the eliminations of black belt. My instructor also competed. My instructor hit Alan Steen so hard with a ridge hand that everybody said it's amazing that his neck is that flexible because the top of his head hit the middle of his back. That's how far
Oh
back
my
his head
God.
went when he got knocked out with a ridge hand. The following year, I knocked out Pat Burleson with a ridge hand also. Now, in that tournament, if you look at it, because that's the only one was televised, I knocked Pat out with a left ridge hand that he was out for at least 10 minutes because that's how much time it took to revive him. And the winning technique was a ridge hand to the midsection. So I beat him with ridge hands for the national championship on TV. And because of that, it was so brutal because I took the eye out of the guy Worthy, the guy that the Marine from Fort Lejeune. His eye was patched up. He couldn't fight in the round robin at the end. I was responsible for karate not being shown anymore for 10 years. And I was the one responsible for bringing it back on television 10 years later at Alan Steen's tournament.
Let me
That
stop
I
you real
had,
fast. Let me tell you real fast, just so you'll have some reference. I got my 10th degree black belt. It was such an honor by Pat Burleson and Alan Steen in Texas. That's who gave me my 10th degree black belts. Continue. Go ahead.
great history. We have great pedigree.
We sure do. Continue.
So, so at this tournament now, when we went back, we were flying back on the airplane, and my instructor didn't look very happy. So I was really concerned because I thought I did a really good job that he'd be proud of. So I said, Sensei, is everything okay? He said, yeah. Now, at that time you could fly with trophies. So I had trophies on every seat. You didn't have to buy an extra seat to put your trophies. When I walked in the plane with the trophy, they said, oh my God, yeah, bring it in, put it on your seat. So as we were flying back, I said, Sensei, are you okay? He said, yes. I said, but you don't look very happy. What's wrong? He said, well, some people approached me about something. I said, what? He said, about you. And he said, why? What's the problem? Well, while you were having fun beating up on people, they approached me and said, excuse me, Sensei Peter, is Mike Stone your student? And he said, yes. Isn't it true you just got back from Okinawa not long ago and opened up a school in Fort Chaffee, Arkansas? Yes, not even a year. Well, we were wondering. Now, anytime somebody starts a sentence with, we were wondering, run for the hills. There's something attached to it. So they said, we were wondering, we're not accusing you or anything. We just want to ask your idea about, so we don't appreciate that someone coming from Okinawa with your pedigree and with the people you trained with and everything in Okinawa, that you would come here and take your top black belt, reduce him to a brown belt, so he could win all these tournaments. My instructor said, what? Yes, you got to agree, Mike Stone is no brown belt. He said, you're right, he's not. He's a white belt. He only started 3 months ago. This was now the 6th month. He only started 6 months ago, and I only allowed him to wear a brown belt to get experience at these brown belt tournaments. That's the only reason. He's still a white belt. They said, a white belt? Are you crazy? They said, you got to promote this guy to a black belt. I said, I can't. Why? I told him his first day is going to take him 5 years. What do I tell him now? So now we're on the flight, and I said, what did you say to them? They told me, Mike, that if you are not promoted to a black belt, you won't be allowed to compete in any of the tournaments that they are involved in because they won't accept you as a white belt. you have to compete as a black belt. And I know how much you love competing. So when we land and get back to the military post, I'm going to have to promote you to a black belt. In my under my breath, I said, it's about time. And he said, what did you say? I said, what time is it?
Wow, what kind of that's who you've been since 11 years old. That's who you are. Your
Yes.
mindset is responsible for your success. And then now that you get your black belt, do you ever compete against Chuck Norris or
I never competed
Jim
against Chuck.
Harrison?
Yeah. My first tournament as a black belt was the Internationals 1964, which I won heavyweight division and grand champion.
Nice.
So and that was August 4th, 1964.
You know some of the names you defeated that day?
Not, oh, yes, two, Tony Taloners and Harry Kealanui.
Wow, I know Tony Talon's. Wow, those are good names. And then, and I heard you also worked out with Bruce Lee when you got your black belt as well. Was that true?
Well, okay, now that we're on that subject, I'm going to tell the truth about that also. Okay. Uh, I was asked, I'm going to have to go ahead and then back up if it's okay. Again, you can edit it however you wish.
Okay.
I was asked 43 years after Bruce's death, I was asked not by Linda, she sent a guy named Tommy Lee from San Francisco to drive down to Orange County and to ask me if I would give the keynote address for the opening of the museum exhibit of Bruce Lee in Seattle, Washington. But there was conditions. The condition was that whatever I wrote as the keynote address, I would have to give it to her and she would have to approve it and edit it. I said, then she doesn't want me to say anything. I said, I'm not going to do that. If she wants me to give, I said, listen, it's been 40. Listen to this, Keith. Please try to absorb this. Think about this. For all the time I've known Bruce and after his death, I've never given any interviews, any articles, anything about my relationship with Bruce. Never. What happened was my very first session with Bruce, I think Chuck and Joe had either a Monday or a Friday, or I don't know what day we had, but we were assigned a different day to work out with Bruce, to train with Bruce. This is the truth. Our first session was the only physical training we did other than Bruce teaching me some Chinese katas, which he then promoted me. I have a certificate into Bruce Lee's system, and I don't know that Chuck and Joe have one. I don't know if they do or not. But Bruce Lee promoted me into his system. I have a certificate till today from him. So, but after that first session, we never did anything physical. Now, let me explain the first session. I was never intimidated by anybody, whether they were 6'5" and 250 or 130 pounds at 5'7". Never intimidated. So our first session, and my ego is so big that my pride is so vast that I won't let anybody show me up. So in our first session, it started like this. We went in the garage. He had a big, heavy bag hanging. And he said, okay, Mike, for the first session, this is what we're going to do. Now, I understand, Bruce. Why? Because I was a teacher also. Every teacher has certain pet techniques that they do, and they demonstrate on their students. First of all, the student is petrified to even stand there with their hands down, not knowing how the guy's going to slap you upside your head at any time for no reason at all, just to let you remember who's the teacher. So there's a little ploys and tactics that black belts use in selecting certain people to demonstrate on in their classes if they want to make a point, where the person has no option but to take a beating. This is the truth. So in this particular exercise, he said, oh, on this one, can you stand behind this bag and just put your back just barely touching the bag. But I'm standing facing the garage wall away from Bruce, and Bruce is on the other side going to do a jump flying side kick. And I'm not going to know when he's jumping and kicking. So I'm already knowing, like, okay. So the whole first session was everything about what Bruce can do and how he can intimidate. And he's going to show me his favorite techniques, the things that he always demonstrates and shows off to other people, which allows him to be superior in every instance. I understand the game. So I stood there. He jumped, did a side kick, nearly knocked me through the back wall of the garage. I went back and said, wow. He said, what do you think? I said, that's pretty good. And he was disappointed. Like, is that it? I said, yeah, it was okay. So then he said, okay, let's do another one. And he said, I did this with Chuck and Joe. Now, when he said about Chuck, okay. But when he said about Joe, I said, well, let me think about this
Joe
for a while.
Louis. Yeah. Yeah.
The exercise was to stand feet to feet. You know, Indian wrestling,
Yeah.
where you lock hands like this, and then you
Uh-huh.
out each other, but your feet are like that. Well, he did that where the arm is fully extended like this, and the elbow is not allowed to bend. So it's not a bent this like arm wrestling. It's a fully extended arm without a bent elbow. So he says, we'll do that. And when I say go, you try to put my arm down, I try to put yours down. I said, okay. So we stood out there, we hold our arms out, and he says, are you ready? I said, yeah. So he says, okay, go. So we struggled a little bit, and I put him down. Well, right away, he said, you cheated. I said, what? He said, you cheated. I said, how did I cheat? You bent your elbow. I said, no, Bruce, I didn't bend my elbow. He said, you did. I said, okay, you want to do it again? He said, yeah. So we did it again. So when I had my arm extended like that, I tapped my elbow underneath. I said, you mean this part has to be locked out? He said, yeah. I said, okay, is it okay if I hold it here like that so I don't bend my elbow? He said, yeah, okay. So he said, you ready? I said, yeah, go. So I put him down again. He said, you cheated again. I said, Bruce, I didn't bend my elbow. Honest, I didn't bend my elbow. He said, never mind about that. And he said, when I did it to Joe, I put Joe down all 3 times. I said, really? I don't believe that. Joe may have let you. Joe may have let you do that, but I don't think he would have put Joe down 3 times.
Joe
So
Louis,
that's
right?
how.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from that day on, then a situation happened with Black Belt Magazine. Mito Orihara. Obviously, Mito became a very good friend of Bruce's, took lessons from him. And of course, all the magazines that were done through Black Belt Magazine because of Mito's relationship with Bruce. So Bruce came to me one day. I mean, not Bruce, Mito Orihara. I was at Black Belt Magazine, and he says, Mike, can I talk to you about something? I said, yeah. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but, Bruce is talking a little bit too much, that he is taking credit for you, Chuck and Joe, that he developed you, that you guys are champions because of his relationship with you. I said, oh, come on. Bruce wouldn't say that. He said, no, he is. And he's bragging about it here at the magazine all the time. And people are like, hey, wait a minute. I think I know Mike before he was a champion, before Bruce. In fact, I won the international black belt the night that Bruce did the demonstration, 1964. And we went out to dinner, me, Bruce, Junri, and Ed Parker for Chinese dinner as a celebration of my winning the international that first year. So I said, oh, Mito, come on. Bruce wouldn't dare say something like that. And he says, no, but he's saying it too much now. And I don't know how to tell him, Bruce, maybe you should not go around saying that it's because of you that these guys are champions. So I was doing a movie with him called The Wrecking Crew, and we were on location at Idlewild, California. And we were rooming together. And there was something Bruce did that day that upset me. And so I just figured, well, okay, I'll confront him when we go back to the room. So we're back in the room together and getting ready to go to sleep. And I said, Bruce, can I ask you something? He said, yeah. I said, I'm just asking you, Bruce, so don't be upset. Uh, I heard from somebody quite reliable that you have been saying that the reason I'm as good as I am and Chuck Norris is as good as he is and Joe Louis was because of your association with us, that we're training with you is why we have become superior martial artists. And his first answer to me, I knew was a lie. He said, is that what you believe? I said, what? He said, is that what you believe? I said, no, I'm asking you, did you say anything like that? So he was so defensive, and I saw his facial expression, and I knew he wasn't being honest. He said, well, what can I do? If that's what you believe, I can't change your mind. I said, no, I want you to tell me the truth. Did you say that? Or are you saying things like that? He said, never mind, if that's what you believe. So that's it. From that moment on, our relationship just cooled off immediately.
Before, when you were fighting in tournaments, I had heard you were undefeated. Is that true? when you were fighting?
Yes, it's not true, of course. Let me explain it. In fact, I wrote something about it because I've been hearing so much crap over the years. So this is how I honestly feel, and this is the truth. I lost 3 times. Alan Steen beat me when I was a brown belt. Supposedly, I was just a white belt, but we fought in that elimination thing at the tournament in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Alan Steen was a black belt. He beat me legitimately with a good sidekick. That was not individual competition. Where I am undefeated is in elimination, in black belt elimination tournaments. Team events and other special events, I don't count those as victories.
Right, right.
But individually, yes, I'm undefeated. So now the question is, and I said, it's very difficult for me to even say that because I'm thinking about who came up with 83, 91, 92. I said, that's a bunch of crap. Where did the numbers ever start coming out that this was the records? I mean, even in boxing, they keep meticulous records of who you fight, when you fought. And that was kept up to the tournament promoters. They are the only ones that truly know, but many of them would destroy their records after 2 or 3 months if they kept it at all. And the eliminations were so haphazard. Imagine in the World Championship in Chicago at the USKA, I fought 12 times in one day. Mathematically, in a single elimination tournament, it's impossible. There have to be thousands of competitors
Right, right. Eight would be
for
the
me to
most.
fight 12 times. So I never gave that any value. But what I do explain, and I feel I have to, because it is a very incredible thing to say that you're undefeated. So in elimination tournaments that you go through the regular process, I have never lost. So now the question is, how many matches have there been? I have no clue. Somebody came up with some number that had, again, like how bullshit becomes the truth, that everybody starts to believe that's how many times. So the way I
I
answer it
heard
is this.
90s. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 98, it doesn't matter what the number is. It's all bullshit to me. So here's how I answer it. I have never lost in single elimination tournament. I do not have a second place trophy in anything I've ever competed in. So pick a tournament. I've won from elimination up to grand champion or up to division champion and then grand champion. So I don't have a second place trophy. So the answer is, how many did I win? The answer is all of them.
Gosh,
That's my answer.
that's just, you don't understand how impressive that is. That's it's literally mind blowing. I was number one for 3 years, and I had my share of losses. I on a given day, the top 10 were just badass. Steve Fisher, all these great fighters,
Sure.
Mike Jinnah,
Sure.
Ray McCallum, and all these great guys. But on any given Sunday, now I dominated a good bit, I have to say, in order to stay number one for 3 years. But Bill Wallace, all these guys, Joe Louis, all of them would lose from time to time, but your
Of
record
course.
is what inspired all of us just thinking, you had a persona that you were so aggressive, and everybody I spoke to, I never saw you fight, but I saw some films. They were just super aggressive, and people couldn't deal with your mental attitude. You just knew you're going to win, and you would dominate. But I'm telling you now, I in my mindset, I know I defeated 17 people who were in the top 10 at different times. And that's what I look for. I look for top 10 fighters and won the small
Right.
tournaments and national tournaments. And that was my goal. I liked the one-on-ones. I looked for one-on-ones. If you were the best, I wanted to fight you. Thank God I
Yes.
was not in your era. I am so happy that there's a place for me to be, and it was in my era. My goodness. Tell me, do
No,
you know of any other names that you fought? Because I love the names. Um, Joe Louis, you fought Joe Louis?
no, he was in a heavyweight by that time because Joe
Oh, I
came
got you.
after. So they made distinctions in weight division. They even went from only 2 divisions. They went to 4 divisions to have light, middle, light heavy, and heavy. So they
Right,
made
right.
distinctions. By that time, by 1967, 68, they had already. But initially, it was just you just line up, and if you were about and how they would do it was not by you didn't have a scale. They'd line all the black belts up by height. Then they take the number and divide it in half. If there's 100, we take to this 50. These are lightweights and these are heavyweights, and that's how they divided it up. It was not by actually getting on a scale.
And no gear. No gear,
no
just
gear,
hands.
nothing.
Wow.
No.
That's why they call
So
it blood and guts
the
era.
thing is, when they talk about, we were the precursor to MMA and UFC.
Right.
Now, okay, let's stretch this. Now let's get our mind wrapped around the whole concept. There was always an issue during our time, during my time especially, and of course yours because you were not far behind, that the styles and systems mattered. In fact, Bruce Lee's initial introduction to the black belt division or the black belt rules meeting at the internationals was he made brash statements that everybody's karate was full of shit because they were restricted, they were confined by styles and systems. So he didn't believe in that, but yet he believed that his system was the best. So he said that people should be free not to be confined to any particular doctrine or style or movement, that everything was freewheeling. But when you become so freewheeling that you design a particular system that best suits your body style and structure, then you've created a system, the very thing you didn't want people to do. So everybody tried to become Bruce Lee. What a ridiculous idea. So people
Mhm.
don't understand a lot of the little nuances and the thinking, the truly honest, deep thinking that it takes to have wisdom.
Is there anything particular that you're very proud of? Is there any tournament person you fought or all of it? What do you take away from your martial arts competitive career? Just your competitive career. That the one right there.
This is
That's the
it.
thing you're most proud of.
I have no trophy more valuable than this one.
See?
Why?
See, that's the
Because
perfect story.
no, because this is the start of who I became. This is who I am. It started that far back. So every trophy I've ever received, no matter how big, no matter what the acclaim, no matter who I beat, none of that is really truly important because this represents who I am. Every trophy I've won, every first place, every not losing, I'm not proud of that. I expected to win. I want this is why I'm fighting.
You guys,
So
we're
I
talking
hope
about,
I
well,
answered you there.
yes,
Yeah.
we're talking about a positive mindset that propelled you to do incredible achievements. Really good. Well, let's do this. I want to end this episode on this one, and then I
Okay.
cannot wait to start the next one. And everybody, I just want to thank you again for being my guest on the show. I know the audience is going to love these stories as much as I have, and we cannot wait to get into the mindset. You're dealing with your mind. I can't wait. So please tune in for that episode as well. And until next time, ciao. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you very much.